This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Speak Boise. Speak Boise is a community-driven studio space where voices from all walks of life can speak and be heard. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Speak Studios, Speak Boise, and at their website, speakstudios.com. Speak Studios. Speak and be heard. This podcast is also brought to you by Instant Imprints. Promote better with Instant Imprints. Instant Imprints are Boise's visual communications experts and your place for everything you need to promote your business, club, school, or group. As a locally owned business, Instant Imprints specializes in making your organization more visible with custom branded apparel, embroidery, promotional items, print services, and wide format printing for signs, as well as banners and vehicle graphics. Want better ways to get noticed? You better visit Instant Imprints at instantimprints.com/Boise or call 208-IMPRINT. That is 208-467-7468.
Hello, this is Travis from Speak Boise. I have one important question for all you listeners out there. Do you guys need help growing your business? Because it's what you don't know that will cost you. Tolu Peer Advisory Group is here for every stage of your business growth. If you want to find out more information about them, you can check out their website. That's TALLOO.com.
Alcohol Tipping Point is brought to you by Coffee and Supply Co. Looking for a new coffee experience? I am. Try Coffee and Supply Co., located in Eagle, Idaho. It's family-owned and features a pour-over bar, a unique bites menu, including vegan and gluten-free options, all locally sourced. Mention Speak Boise and receive 10% off any food and beverage. Visit coffeeandsupplyco.com or follow them at Coffee and Supply Co. Hello, welcome back to Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Maisner, and today I have a very special guest from Australia. Her name is Mary Stuart, and I'm going to have her introduce herself a little bit, and then we'll get started. So, Mary, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Deb. It's so exciting. It's my first ever podcast as a guest, so thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. So tell me where you're calling in from.
So I'm calling in from Geelong in Australia, which is a surf coast town. It's not far from Melbourne, probably an hour out of Melbourne. And I moved down here probably about 8 years ago with my husband and my dog Eddie. And I grew up in Tullamarine near the airport, so near the Melbourne airport. And I grew up with two brothers and a sister. And yeah, so that's my story.
Yeah, so born and raised Australia, live in a beautiful coastal town.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then I found you on Instagram, and you just stood out to me because of your beautiful words. And then I found out you are writing a book, and you have dealt with your own journey with drinking. So, just tell me a little bit about your relationship with alcohol and how that's changed. Okay.
It might be good for me to talk about like from when I was a child, because my actual book actually talks about that. So when I was a child, I was really shy, like painfully shy child, and the type of child that used to hide behind their mum's skirt, and that was how it all sort of started, I suppose, because I was so shy. And then getting older, I had this insecurity about myself. I would constantly, as a child, change my clothes, and I wanted to look pretty for other people, and I wanted people to praise me and tell me they liked me and that kind of thing. And that sort of just ended up growing and getting worse and worse as I got older. So the socially awkward part, I think I sort of rectified that by masking this almost fake confidence that I had around other people. So I worked in hospitality for probably over 6 or 7 years, and I learned how to mask that, my social awkwardness, and learned how to, talk to people and, not and come across as though I was confident, I suppose. So, yeah, that ended up going into my adulthood and working in hospitality as well, which is a big drinking culture. I was binge drinking a lot when I was working in hospitality, and which was sort of weekly, I suppose, or fortnightly. But when I did drink, I drank to excess. So that didn't sort of stop. And even when I was married, I had previously been married. I got married when I was 22, got divorced when I was 30. And during that time when I was married to my ex-husband, I binge drank for most of that relationship. So events and, weddings and things like that. So when I got out of that relationship, I ended up in another relationship with another guy who I didn't really have a lot in common with, but I was like a bit of a chameleon when it came to relationships. I tried to fit into their life, and that's where the drinking got worse, because I was not being myself. And I don't think I ever was myself, even growing up. So, and that's where the alcohol ended up becoming a daily habit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up just painfully shy, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of your tools was just acting like another person, putting on that mask, and then when you got older, it was the alcohol that just kind of helped you come out of your shell. And it sounds like it was also normal, and it was part of your career as well.
That's correct. That's right. So I went from working in hospitality to I worked in a call centre for a while. So obviously, as part of my job, I had to mask that with confidence as well, talking to people over the phone. And then I then moved into community services. So I worked in disability and worked in mental health as well. And then later I ended up working with offenders as well. So my job was quite stressful as well. So the stress of working in those roles and working in leadership roles as well, that also made my drinking worse, because the stress of my work and working with certain types of people was very stressful.
Sure. And then, I was just going to say, so you had, it got worse with this other relationship. And then what happened?
So then after, so during that relationship, I was actually taking drugs as well. So like going out and taking ecstasy and speed. That was just a part of our life as well. Like, it wasn't often, but that was something that we did together as well. That didn't end well, that relationship, and then I ended up single, and that was quite painful for me, because I always was in a relationship. That was my security blanket, being with someone. And then being single was not good for me. I was drinking on my own at home. I was drinking up to 3 bottles of wine a night. So even, getting up in the morning, I was in a constant hangover, waking up and going to work every day. So that was not good when I was in that state. The first time I tried to quit was when one of my friends from high school had a brain tumour and ended up passing away. And he was only 36 at the time. So that was one of my times when it was really like my rock bottom, I suppose. So that was the first time I tried to quit for an extensive period of time. So prior to that, I'd gone, I really need to stop drinking. I really need to stop this. So, you know, I'd quit for 1 or 2 days. But this was the first time I actually quit for a couple of months. So that was the first time I tried to quit. And then I thought I really need to go and speak to a counsellor because my drinking's out of control. So I even went on antidepressants at the time where I felt like I was depressed at the time. So I was on those, but I felt like I wasn't happy and I wasn't sad. So that didn't really help either. So I went to 6 counselling sessions. They were drug and alcohol sessions, and I didn't really feel like that helped me at all. In the beginning I did, and then the session sort of didn't really help. So then I ended up drinking again. So I didn't really have any plans when I was quitting on these occasions. It was, I wasn't really, I didn't have a reason to quit, if that made sense. So the next time I quit because I knew that it was getting out of control, I quit again, another attempt, and that was, like I said, another couple of months that I quit for. And then I met my now husband, which I actually went to high school with. So so we'd met after 22 years later, we met up again, and we didn't really leave each other's side from that day. So I ended up going on a holiday to Spain with him in the September of the same year that we met up again. And then I said to him, I think I might have a drink. And so that was it. It was all over after that. I was back drinking again, and just as heavy as I was before. It didn't affect our relationship. Like, we were still really close and getting along well. But it was my work that was causing me to drink. I felt like I needed to drink to alleviate that stress I was feeling at work. Then I decided I would quit again. And that was, I decided to even change my diet, because now I was starting to feel unhealthy. Like I was feeling like, just not good. My body felt like it was going to shut down, to be honest, like, because I was drinking so much. I had the DT, so I had the delirium tremors, and during the day I didn't drink at work. Like I never got to that stage where I drank at work or drank before work. It was always, as soon as I got home, I was just drinking until I went to bed or until I passed out, really. So then my mum became really unwell. She ended up being diagnosed with uterine cancer in 2015, and she became progressively unwell over 4 years. And that was another reason for me to not drink. So I was drinking a lot, obviously, while she was still unwell. And then it got to Christmas Day 2017, and I just had watched a series of videos on Facebook, and just some of the words that this person was using in these videos, like, alcohol's not the joy juice that you think it is, and all of these phrases that resonated with me. I think that's the reason why I thought, no, I can actually do this time. I can quit this time. So I started to just watch those videos and sort of prep myself to quit. So I didn't want to just quit like I did on the previous occasions. I actually wanted to have a plan. I wanted to make sure that I was prepped for quitting. And so I did that right up from, I think it was about October of that year, right up until December. And, I wanted to take photos of myself to take selfies of myself to look at and see what I looked like as well while I was drinking, and while I was drinking heavily. And then it got to December or Christmas of 2017, and I drank heavily on that Christmas day, and thinking I want to have a good time with my mum because, it might be her last Christmas. And then I got to December 26th and I woke up with the worst hangover ever in the world, and I just went, no, that's it. I'm quitting today. And that was the last time I drank.
Wow. So that was that was December of 2017?
That's correct. Yeah. So that was the very last day that I drank alcohol. So yeah, I've been alcohol free now for nearly 3.5 years. So so very exciting that I've been able to stay on the path that I have, which is really good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I just think it's so important to share your story. Like it didn't happen that day in 2017. No. Like it was everything leading up to then, and all those different times you were taking a break and you were practicing, and then you learned some tools, and then you had like a toolkit to help you with this other time. Yeah, and you had your whys, and so important. Yeah. So what? Go ahead.
Yeah. So go. No, you go ahead. It's fine.
Well, I was gonna ask you like what was different and what helped you, and maybe that leads into the book that you wrote called Living an Alcohol-Free Life Your Way. How does that all tie in together?
So, the reason why I actually quit and why I decided, and it goes back to, and the reason what I wrote in the book is like my whole, pretty much what I've just told you, and it goes through that sort of just snippets of what's happened over the course of my life. And it's not, the book wasn't intended to be about me. It was intended to help other people to live their life their way, and, their alcohol-free life their way. Because I found when I was reading, I joined Facebook pages, I joined Facebook groups, that helped me, taking selfies of myself for over a 40-day period, and then looking back to my day one and deciding, if I keep looking at this photo of me on day one, then that's going to help me keep going. So I think the whole thing about the whole alcohol-free, living an alcohol-free life, I think you have to do it your way. You can't, there's no cookie cutter way of quitting, there's no cookie cutter way of losing weight. There's no cookie cutter way of doing anything really. So that's why I wanted to write this book. And I'd read lots of other books, Annie Grace, there's an Australian writer, Rebecca Weller. That was the first book I read, called The Happy Hour. And that was like a memoir style book. And most of the books that I read were like memoir books. And I think that's a really important component of that. But I think the most important component of the book that I've written is the journal prompts, and you deciding and working out what works for you, because there's no quick fix to quitting drinking. Like, it doesn't happen, like what you said before, it doesn't happen quickly. You have to learn from your mistakes that you've made. And when people write things on Facebook about, in the Facebook groups and things like that about, I feel really disappointed in myself that I've started drinking again. I quit for 3 months, or I quit for 8 months, and now I'm drinking again. It's not a bad thing to do that. So I think the trial and error approach is a really good approach to have, and not be so hard on yourself when you start drinking again. So I think that was the key thing for me, and that was the key thing to writing the book, is to show people that it's not a bad thing to start drinking again, because you're not ready to quit at that stage. That's not your time. So the book is about just going through some of those things, and some of the things won't apply to some people, and I talk about that in the book, that some of the journal prompts won't apply to you, but you just take what works for you. And that was the purpose of writing the book, is to help people to discover what works for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful to share that with the world. Had you ever written a book? I mean, what made you like,
No.
that's a big project to set out.
No. Oh, and it was a big project, trust me. It's only a 152-page book, but
Okay. Still.
the process of writing a book, if anyone wants to write a book, it is a long process, and the editing process, and you think you've got it right, and then you've got to go back and change things again, and it's quite an interesting process. I enjoyed it, but it was a very challenging process. Yeah, so I will probably end up writing another book, but I'll probably take a little bit of time to come down off this one, I think.
Yeah. So this book sounds like it's not just like an informational book. It's kind of more like a journal, self-help kind of. Does it?
It's definitely self-help. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely self-help. Yeah. The stories are there to just complement or just to demonstrate or to show people. People are always interested in how other people live an alcohol-free life, and I think that the memoir part sort of had to be in there to, have that balance of both, rather than just solely being about people writing journal, their journal entries. I think it sort of had to be a bit of both, just to have that balance of me sharing my story and demonstrating to people that it can be done, and then also having those journal prompts there for people to find out what works for them.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, that's my philosophy. Like, there's more than one way, and it's definitely not cookie cutter. And take what you can from all these different resources and tools.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like you were saying making mistakes, having, sometimes people call them data points, not being perfect with quitting drinking was one of the key tools for you.
Definitely. Yeah. So, watching those videos that inspired me, learning what works and why I drank was really important. And that's a key part of the book as well, is for people to learn why they drink, because I think a lot of people go, right, that's it, I'm quitting drinking, I've had enough, I'm drinking too much. However, they don't know why they're drinking. So I think that was the reason why I wanted to talk about. So some of the chapters in the book are about catastrophizing, and which I do, I've learned to sort of dumb down some of those thoughts, with affirmations and things like that. But the journaling really helped for me. So the journaling was a really important part of me living an alcohol-free life. And there's a line that I write in the book about journaling, and I know people think, oh, journaling, people talk about this all the time. But it's so important, because a lot of people just write their journal and they leave it. But, a line that I write in the book is, don't write and leave, but write and read. So go back and read what you've, how you were feeling at that time, what alcohol made, why did you drink so much at that time? And another key point that I put in there is, write when, you wake up with a hangover, write about when how you're feeling, because that's going to be key to have those negative associations to alcohol as well when you want to stay on track.
Yeah, it sounds like, taking a picture of yourself every day, how brave. Taking a picture when you're hungover, because I've done it too. I've done that day one picture, and it ain't pretty. But yeah, having those visual reminders, and having the, actually a written reminder of how you felt, because we tend to taint our memories, and lots of times it can lead us back to drinking, like, it wasn't that bad, but then it really was. Take a look at this.
And I think sometimes, and especially for me, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so, drinking back then was really, everyone looked like they were having a good time. Everyone looked like they were having so much fun. And it was this whole illusion that alcohol just made everything better, but it doesn't make anything better at all. And even when people say they need a drink, do people really need a drink? It's like we've been ingrained to think that way, I think, and over time people are starting to get better with that. And I think, people like yourself having podcasts like this, this is going to help people, get that message, to get that message out to people that drinking's not all it's cracked up to be. So it's actually doing your body a lot of damage. And but in saying that, people need to realize that themselves. Yes, we can write books and have podcasts and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's their decision to make that choice.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think as an American, I think of Australia as, ooh, that country's full of heavy drinkers. Would you agree? I mean, that's your experience, but what are your thoughts about Australia and drinking culture, and is that changing?
Oh, definitely. So, obviously being older now, but, not going out as much as I used to, but it's definitely changing. So there's a lot more people I work with that don't drink at all. Or have quit drinking like I have, and people just don't talk about it as much, and they don't talk about it in a positive way, like as they don't talk about alcohol in a positive like they used to. It used to be like, oh, we're all going out to have a drink. It's not like that anymore. Like, people don't actively talk about, celebrating going out drinking, I suppose, like they used to in Australia. Yeah. Yeah. So is drinking not so prevalent in America? Or?
Oh, it's prevalent. It's very prevalent. Yeah, I think like 80% of Americans drink.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're really into our craft beers and wine. It's definitely prevalent. I think of Australia. I think there's like a stereotype of Australians as being really heavy drinkers, and I don't know if you guys think of Americans as, oh, that's full of heavy drinkers. No?
Well, I actually don't. Yeah. So, no, it doesn't really come across as though, like, maybe from, watching movies and things like that and watching shows, more of a college perspective. Maybe when people are at college, they drink a lot, in America. But apart from that, that's probably really the only message that I've ever noticed. It's more like when you're at college, you tend to drink a lot. But I suppose it's the same here. When people are at university, they tend to do that. But I work at a university during the day, and I found that younger people don't drink as much as they used to. So, like, because we have social events and things like that at university, and I find that they don't drink as much as what I would have when I was younger. So it is changing. It's definitely changing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think we're just like normalizing not drinking, kind of like with smoking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly right. It's starting to get that way where people are like, oh, no, I don't really want to do that. And it is the same with smoking. There's so many people at my work that have quit smoking just in the last 2 years. So it's amazing how things are changing when it comes to people's health and the way that they view their health as well, and including drinking and smoking as part of that.
Yeah. So besides giving yourself grace to make mistakes, what would you say are some of your other top tips for quitting?
Okay. So I would say one of the things that I did was focusing on the positive things that you've done so far. So looking at those positive things and looking back over those selfies that we were talking about, looking back over your journal, going to bed early and reading something alcohol-free related, just to sort of cement some of those thoughts, so I suppose. like purchasing a memoir, self-help book, and just reading that before bed. Reading before bed will also help you sleep better as well, and that's a key thing to making you feel better, which is not going to, it's like that cause and effect thing, I suppose. If you're not sleeping well, you may tend to drink more. Do you know what I mean? Like, you may tend to wake up the following day and go, oh, I'm really tired. Oh, I might just have a drink before bed. So I think, having that different routine before bed is really helpful. Continuing to strengthen your mind around how alcohol, like what alcohol does to your body as well. That was another thing. Like, there's sections in the book where I've got Mary wisdoms for living an alcohol-free life. So, so they're not intended to tell people how to live an alcohol-free life, but they're things that I learned over the time. So some of those things are like, alcohol will not solve all of your problems. Don't wait until you lose someone to experience or experiencing a stressful event before you decide to quit. So there were plenty of stressful events that I had over that time, including my mum getting ill and then passing away in 2019. So I also talk about how to cope with stressful events as well, and also those journal prompts on, asking yourself how you can cope with stressful events moving forward. But I think the number one thing for me is the planning as well. And I know that probably seems a bit stressful for people, but planning before you go out, like if you are going to drink, how many drinks are you going to have? Is someone going to make you accountable for how many, drinks that you're having? So those types of journal prompts are what's in the book. So yeah, there's lots of little tips and tricks in the book.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And you've gone back to journaling a couple times, and I just wanted to share something that I had heard on another podcast about journaling, and it was like, when you think back to when you did math at school and you had a math problem, or even now, like, you're at the grocery store or whatever. So, but you have a complicated math problem. You're trying to do it in your head. And it's like, no, get out a sheet of paper and write down the solution, write it out. And that's what journaling can be for you, is solving that math problem.
Definitely. That's a really good analogy, isn't it?
I thought so too. Because I'm going to be honest, I would like to be a journaler. I actually used to be a journaler. I have I have 6 journals under my bed from junior high. Well, actually from 6th grade through my first year of college. They're hilarious. But I stopped. I just stopped after that. But I'm like, you know what? Because I keep hearing like journaling, it can be so valuable for you to just get that out of your head and onto paper, or no. I mean, you could probably just do it on notes in your phone, or.
Of course. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that you have to write it down, but it's I was even typing my feelings, like I was just getting a Word document up and just typing.
Yeah.
Because some of those things have ended up in the book as well. So it's just so important, I think. And how many times have you gone back over and read a journal and you're like, I can't even remember feeling like that? So you actually forget how you were feeling at that time.
Oh my gosh.
It's really important. Yeah.
I did, when I pulled them out recently, read them, and I had like a boyfriend, and in my mind I was like, oh, we had such a good relation. Oh, my little high school sweetheart, or whatever. This was my first one. But anyway, and I read back through my journal entries and I was like, ooh, that was not a healthy relationship. But I had like tainted my mind. My memory was just colored differently.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly right. And I think it's the same with drinking. I think we think, we had such a good time out with so-and-so or one of your friends, but then think, you actually do taint it with that, your rose-coloured glasses or whatever, thinking that was a good time. But then you forgot that you went home because you offended someone and you had a fight with someone, and then you ended up passing out on your bed or something. So you don't remember those things, but you remember, the good things, I suppose. And you forget all of the other stuff and that really horrible things that you used to feel about yourself or the situation that you were in. So I got myself into some crazy situations which haven't made it to the book.
That's book 2.
Well, I'm deciding whether I want to share that with the world.
Yeah.
I think what I've shared is enough, I think, for now.
So what do you call yourself then? I mean, labels.
Alcohol-free.
Alcohol-free, yeah.
The reason why is because sober, to me, in my mind, and I know this probably doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but sobriety and sober in my mind just seems so temporary for me. Whereas alcohol-free just seems like my life is alcohol-free. Alcohol-free is not a part of my life. So that seems more permanent for me. And I can't even explain why that's the way it is in my head. But that's, so it's the same with alcoholic. I don't like the word alcoholic, and I talk about that in the book as well. Because when I was younger, when people talked about alcoholics, it just seemed like it was a person that didn't have their life together. And even though that was the case for me, but when I was in the midst of being, in that alcohol-fueled stage of my life, I didn't like people calling me an alcoholic. And it's that label as well, coming from a disability background and people being labelled what their disability is. It's the same with being called an alcoholic. I didn't like being labelled an alcoholic because it felt like, or people thought, I didn't have my life together, even though, like I said earlier, that was the case. My life wasn't together. But I think when you're in the midst of that, you don't like being labelled something. Yeah, so I know a lot of people choose to call themselves an alcoholic, and that's fine. Whatever people choose to call themselves, and I don't judge anyone for calling themselves an alcoholic or anything like that. I just think it's personal preference, isn't it really? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what do you call yourself?
I do find myself using the word sober more, just because it's shorter and I'm lazy. With sober, like if you look it up, it just means not drunk. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sober. And I'm into, I guess, the way words look and feel. And I'm like, it's kind of like a soft, round little word, kind of like me.
Yeah.
So to me, it's comfortable. It's like a little pillow, like sober. I like alcohol free because the word free has so many meanings, but it's light and airy, and it feels like soaring. It's very empowering, alcohol free.
I think so too.
I think we could bring back teetotaler.
See, I've got a negative, like a
does
teetotaler as well? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never hear it. I just thought teetotalers were just people who didn't drink. Well, what's a tea? So in Australia.
In Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. In Australia, it's like they're boring because they don't drink. Yeah. Like people are boring.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm teetotally awesome. That's funny. Okay. But I do think labels matter. Well, the label that you choose. I mean, that was a good point.
Of course.
That the labels that other people call you, that's why they can be so hurtful in any setting. But what you choose to call yourself, that is so important, and that's where identity starts. So if you're alcohol free, that's how you live your life. If you're sober, like you don't drink, I guess that's why I personally don't like alcoholic because that means that you're powerless over alcohol. And to me, I'm like, I'm powerful over alcohol. Like, it holds no power over me. Like, I fought that
that's
bitch.
Exactly right.
Right?
That's
I'm
exactly
just
right.
all about empowerment. But if it's helpful to you, which I think it is helpful for people to call themselves an addict or an alcoholic, because for them, that's the reminder of,
of course. But that's where it comes back to the journaling. Like, that's where it comes back to writing those feelings down about how you feel about yourself, about what you want to call yourself, about all of that's really important. And I know it all comes back to journaling, and I've brought it all back to journaling, I should say. But it's just been so important for me. And that's why I've chosen to have the journal prompts in the book, because I feel like it can have a positive impact on other people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so helpful. We had talked a little bit about how you like to read before bed or read Quit Lit, which is I mean, if you're listening and you don't know what Quit Lit is, it's books about quitting drinking, basically. And they could be memoirs or self-help. What are some of your favorites?
So some of my favourites, and I mentioned a couple before, obviously Annie Grace, and I think most people love Annie Grace with This Naked Mind. It's just a good combination of her research as well as her story as well. So I really enjoyed that. A Happier Hour, as I mentioned earlier, she's a fellow Australian.
Okay.
Rebecca Weller. Yeah. She was the very first Quit Lit book I bought, and I really enjoyed that. That's a memoir, solely a memoir. And Mrs. D's Going Without, which is Lotta Dan, and she's a New Zealand writer. And that's a funny book, actually. So it's a memoir and it's a diary-like book. And that was one of my favourites. And I also really enjoyed Claire Pooley's The Sober Diaries as well.
That is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good book. Have you read any of the other books?
I've read quite a few. I've read some of the heavier ones like Blackout and the Mary Carr ones. Yeah, I love Quit Lit. And I think because you talked a little bit about what you see in movies. And alcohol use is so dramatized, and it's just like you're going to rehab or you're rock bottom. Like you couldn't read. Yeah, you couldn't read anything real or relate to anything realistic unless, for me, that was reading a Quit Lit book, because I'm like, I can relate to these people and what they're going through. I couldn't, although I do enjoy when a man loves a woman.
I was just about to say that to my friend. I was just about to mention that, because it's so realistic, because I relate to her so much. The hiding the bottles in the bin, all of that thing, getting really angry over nothing, when you're really drunk, people pushing you away, getting paranoid when you're drunk as well. Beautiful movie. I really enjoyed that movie. Yeah.
But all the movies and TV shows, it's all rehab and AA. Yeah. And so that's why I always thought, those are my two choices. Rehab or AA, and I haven't really hit rock bottom. Like, I'm not living the best life, but I'm not. For me, those weren't for me. But yeah.
So, can you just tell me a little bit about your story? Like, as in your how you were saying you didn't have a rock bottom. So what was your story, just briefly?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was similar to yours in that I got to a point where I was drinking heavily to handle stress. For me, it was stress of raising kids, and that's why I'm really into the mommy drinking culture. I'm not into it, fascinated by it, but And so I did get to the point where I would do like a dry month, or I'd stop for a little while, and then I'd be like, just one drink. And then that always leads you down the path to a couple bottles a night. And so I was doing that same thing, quitting and starting and struggling. And it was Annie Grace doing the alcohol experiment. Right. In 2018, where that I was like, wow, this has changed just the way I think about alcohol. You know, how does it really affect you? What are you really using it for? So it's kind of doing those challenges off and on. But it was like a door opened in my mind and I couldn't close it again. So I just could not enjoy alcohol again anymore. I wanted to. Like, I wanted to be a quote unquote normal drinker. I wanted to moderate because that's what society tells us you can do. Everybody else is doing it, right? They look great. So I thought, oh, I can do this. I'm fine. But finally I got to the point where I was done. And then my last drink was December 31st of 2019.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. But it didn't just happen magically. It was a journey and it was a process. And so that's what I'm doing
thing,
now.
Isn't it? Yeah. And that's the thing, like, I could have stopped drinking years ago. Like, I had so many occasions where I, stopped for 2 or 3 days, or I'd stop for, just a week or something like that. And it just wasn't, I could have done it so many times, but it just wasn't my time. And I think that's where having that preparation and, making sure that you're prepared to quit, I think is really important. Whether you think that you've prepared or not, you probably have at some point. So, that you have learnt and what's working and what's not working from the previous attempts as well. And you might just be doing that in your head and not journaling. And if that's the way that works for you, then that's great. It's however people do it, I think is great, because then that's what works for them. So, and that's why I wrote the book. Yeah. So,
which is great. Which brings me back to how can we find you and your book?
So I am at the moment, it's just about to be published on Amazon and a whole range of other, through other bookshops online across the world. So, that's probably going to be in the next week. So for the next few days, I've got a 10% discount on a pre-release. So you can go to my website, which is Mary Stuart, Stuart, .net.au, and you can just type in your email address and then I'll get back to you with a discount code for once it's released.
And I'll put your website in the show notes.
Great, too. Great. That would be really good. Yeah. And then also I'm on Instagram as well. So it's Mary Stuart _author, and that's my handle on Instagram. So you can always jump on there. You can always jump on there and ask me questions as well. I'm quite open with sharing information, and I love getting on there and helping others and giving advice to other people as well when they're trying to quit as well. So always jump on and ask me questions. I'm quite open to that as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate you being open to doing a podcast interview. I feel like I got a world exclusive interview before anybody else. I don't want to brag or anything, but
You did.
I did. Okay.
So if it's on the New York bestseller list, then I'll be like, yeah, Deb had the exclusive.
Yes. And you know what? When you want to come to the United States, come to Idaho, come stay with me in Boise, because it is
awesome.
Beautiful here.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Same in Australia. If you're ever coming to Australia,
oh my gosh,
let me know.
I was really, that was my whole point of doing.
You're like, going to invite me over.
Yeah, I knew where you lived. I was like, ooh, that's a coastal surf town. Oh, good times. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Yes.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been really good. Thank you so much for, having me on today. It's been really good chatting to you, and it wasn't as daunting as I thought.
You're fabulous. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.